Welcome to our second episode of Thunder Classics. I'm Rusty Lindsey. We're joined tonight by head basketball coach Mike Schauer, as well as recent Wheaton grad Aston Francis, soon-to-be recent Wheaton grad Anajuwon Spencer, and we'll be joined in the middle by Luke Anthony, who was a redshirt freshman on the 2018-19 men's basketball team. If you joined us last night, you got to rewatch Wheaton defeating Augustana in the Sweet 16 of their run to the Final Four, and tonight for tonight's game, we're going to rewatch the Marietta Elite Eight game, a game that Wheaton wins 91-87 to advance to the Final Four. And guys, I want to start with coming off the Augustana win because Mike, you had said there towards the end that maybe the hardest thing for you guys was going to be to recenter a little bit and not go overboard with celebrating a win over a big opponent. So what's that look like in the hours and that you have after the win over Augustana in preparation for Marietta?
Yeah, I think that, the biggest thing sometimes when in coaching, part of the job is to sort of try to anticipate some things that might be obstacles and how you'll deal with them. The biggest obstacle I think we faced going into the Marietta game, from my perspective, was sort of just the emotional fatigue from the night before. And, a huge crowd against Augustana, conference opponent. We play really well down the stretch. The emotion of getting through, which I think was one of the two or three best teams in the country on their floor, and going to come back the next night and probably play in front of a few hundred people against an opponent we don't know very well. So the emotional fatigue caused me a little bit of concern. And then the other thing, candidly, is I knew Spencer Peterson wasn't going to play. And because of matchups with Marietta, and I talked last night about sort of the gutty effort Trevor Gunter was giving us at this point because he wasn't healthy. But it was going to be difficult matchups for both he and Gavin because Marietta, is a pretty smaller and quicker type team than Augustana or the Worcesters who came before them. So I was kind of curious how we were going to be able to defend them. And, we talked last night about the depth of this team. We went the other way tonight and go really with four guards and Jay for a big stretch of the game. And the ability to do that the next night I thought was really important. But those were my thoughts going into the game. And this was the first game I was really nervous for because I felt like at this point you had something to lose. To lose in the Elite Eight would have been really disappointing. And I started to feel that get right to the precipice of doing something that you can never take away. And I think, having been to the NCAA tournament a few times, I think losing an Elite Eight game might be one of the more difficult places to have gotten beat. So this game, I was pretty nervous for this game.
You guys as players, how do you come down from a high like that? You just knock off a conference rival in a packed house, their house. How do you have to bring yourself down off that? I'm sure is one of the higher highs that you've experienced as a player.
Aston, you can go first.
All right. Yeah, I think, going into the weekend, I think we're really focused on Augie, and it's hard to mentally prepare for the next game when you don't know who you're going to play until after that first one. And so it's kind of getting your bearings together and figuring out the scouting report kind of the day of. I think we went in coach's hotel room and did the scouting report and all that stuff, and you just got to prepare kind of on the fly. It's hard to adjust when you prepare all week for Augie and don't look forward to the next game. And then you've got about 8 hours, I guess, to prepare for it. I don't think we were very nervous going into it. I think we were still pretty loose. But obviously we were pretty excited and felt like the stakes were high with the Final Four berth on the line.
Yeah. As far as like the mindset, for me, I was pretty just focused on the next task at hand. As I said in the episode yesterday, I was hungry. I was ready. Like who next? I wanted it all. So I was definitely looking forward to Marietta, but also to just like relax and calm down off of the energy from the Augie game. Me personally, I was pretty tired, especially after like all the energy expelled, the excitement, and then plus with the cramping and stuff like that, my body had went through it, so I was ready to just go back and lay down in the hotel room. So as far as winding down from that, it was pretty easy to do that.
How do you guys prepare going into a weekend like that where you've got possibly, of one opponent, you've got two that you have to kind of prepare for, but you don't know who it is? What's that look like as you're prepping?
Yeah, so the way we've always approached that is we're going to focus on the first opponent. So we focused all of our prep attention going into the weekend on Augustana. The two, and Coach Panner is responsible for Augustana, and then Joel Smith and Zach Quam each took the two opponents that we're going to play prior to that game, and we could play on Saturday night, and they're starting to prep for them. And I can't remember which one had Marietta. I don't remember, but so that we're sort of gotten a little bit of a head start on our scout for the next night as coaches. I can barely do one thing at a time. I can't do two things at a time. So I had not watched anything of the other opponent or Marietta. So I wanted our focus to be on Augustana, and that's where we kept it until Friday night after the win against Augie.
How much of that game of Marietta's against Oswego State did you guys get a chance to actually pay attention to? Because I know there's one thing about watching it, but your mind's probably solely on Augustana. So how much of that had you actually paid attention to heading into this?
Personally, virtually none. The assistant coaches did, and I just had a lot of nervous energy, and so I'm just not very good at it. It's going to distract me from the task at hand, which was to beat Augie last night. So I was actually walking around and trying to kind of kill some time. The assistant coaches were paying pretty close attention to that game.
Me personally,
sorry, go ahead.
Me personally preparing for it. Just I got to sit there and watch because I forget the tournament, they had different rules about when we could get in the gym and things like that. But we got to watch a little bit of it, but it kind of helped me kind of like diminish the Augie game a little bit, as far as like not take it as serious as like putting them on a pedestal and just saying like it was important. Like, yeah, we did have an extra chip because it was Augie, but not making it too big of a spectacle, and looking at who was next on the court, and like what people like to do and who could I possibly be matched up with from either team.
As we start to see you guys take the floor, what's going through your minds here? Obviously, you've been on the floor more than a few times in your career, but this is pretty different. The neutral site as opposed to a road game in this scenario.
I think you just want to get off to a good start. Obviously we're pretty familiar with the gym, having played there 4 or 5 times, so it's just want to get off to a good start and kind of get the offense flowing. And, we got off to a pretty hot start, I think.
I was pretty focused on finding where we were going to bring energy from, just with not having as big a crowd. Even though we had a lot of our still fans there, it's pretty hard to fill up a gym with energy without a packed house. So doing that for my team was pretty much what I was thinking about going into it.
Hard to imagine a better start than that for you guys. First look, and it's as clean as you can ask for.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting here early in the game, one of the things I was always focused on when we would start games is how our team's going to play Aston, because everything kind of revolved around that. And what's interesting is because of last night and really watching us play where, quote unquote, kind of the role players carried much of the weight, and Aston until the end didn't play offensively as he normally does. They came out and decided to kind of play Aston, quote unquote, straight up. And you're obviously going to watch that doesn't go real well. And I think we had an advantage, having played against a team who didn't know us very well. It's hard to convince your team the things he's going to do if you've never seen it before. And to just let him kind of do those things, it's going to be a long night.
Aston, you see 2 go in clean like that. At what point, and I think I have a feeling we know what shot it is where you're really feeling it, but does it start to – the shooter's mentality really start to deepen a little bit here as you see 2 go in clean?
A little bit. I know that if I make 2 or 3 in a row, I can probably get away with one that I probably shouldn't shoot. and Coach won't yell at me quite as much if it doesn't go in. So I would just say it made me feel a little more free, where if you miss 2 or 3 in a row, especially if they're not great looks, it's, you kind of get in your head sometimes and think, well, maybe, it's not a great shot. I should pass it up. But, once I got the feeling and they felt good and my shot was feeling good, it was just let it fly if I had some space.
You guys obviously have to do a lot of back-to-backs early in the year with the Leaf Fund and some other tournaments, but you've gone a long time without doing the back-to-back because you only had the one game in the CCIW tournament. So what are the legs like going into this game now that you've played your 4th game now in 8 days?
For me, I specifically remember in this game, especially playing against number 5, Timothy Krieger right there, that how much I need to get in the weight room and still do. Pretty rain parent. After going up against Michael Martin the night before, my body was so fatigued, and trying to go up against him and the guys like 34, they killed me all night. Like, it's something that I can still remember vividly to this day, that they killed me all night as far as like being physical down low and on the boards and stuff like that. So I remember that.
Thing to note here early in the game, because it'll come into play later on, is the pace. This game was up and down from the word go, and the pace of play was really quick, which will get significant when we find ourselves down in the second half, because the number of possessions in the game was still pretty high. Had we gotten down this amount the night before against Augustana, it would have been really tough. So the pace really came into play as the game progressed.
Yeah, this is a little bit different team than what you're used to with Marietta, because some of their best players came off the bench, and a very deep team to figure out.
Very deep, very balanced, and one of the other things that concerned me a little bit going into the game is defensively we always started from who's Luke Peters going to guard, and once we identified that, we kind of go from there. And it was not as easy to identify who Luke was going to play in this game because when they sub, they actually bring their leading scorer in and that sort of stuff. And obviously when that one went in, we all started to go, we might be watching something pretty unique. I remember when we watched the Platteville game earlier in the year, after that game that Aston had 54, I remember looking at JP walking out of the gym going, we'll never see anything like that again. And yet, not only did we see something like it again, we actually saw something even beyond it. I will be honest with you, trying to coach in a game like this when you've got somebody who's doing this is an interesting challenge because it's just something you don't see very often.
Aston, obviously that's probably the shot, and I think we talked about it when you got the Jostens in during the fall. That's probably the shot that you really knew that this could be something special.
Yeah, obviously that's a heat check, and if it goes in, it's probably going to be a good night. But honestly, I never really realize how deep some of my shots are until I see it or someone tells me. And so that one, I read that he was backing up and stopped and didn't realize that I was, back there towards the volleyball line until I saw it after the game.
Mike, I'm sure that's some range you have to get used to as a coach too, because that's probably the first couple times you see it is, what are we doing?
There's no question. I tell people all the time, part of the adjustment for us with Aston was actually for me with Aston and letting him do some things, candidly, I wouldn't let other players do. And it's hard as a coach to go, hey, that might actually be the best thing for us, is for him to hunt a lot of shots, some of which are not going to be great ones. And A and I would talk about he needs to play in such a way that a couple times a night I look at him and go, what was that? Because he kind of needs to be right on the edge of that. And it took me a little while, certainly probably his entire sophomore year, to kind of get comfortable with it. And then certainly by this point, it kind of became who we were, and actually how we played best was, and Aston said last night, what a tremendous testament to the character of the other guys, that they not only embraced it, but really worked really hard to help him.
Aston Francis, and that's the leading scorer for Marietta.
So you guys get up 20-12 here in the first 5 minutes. This has to feel like you guys are firing all cylinders right out of the gates, and things start to snowball a little bit. I would think that you maybe. What's the feeling for you guys on the floor getting off to this good of a start?
I think it was good to see shots go in at the beginning, but with how fast that they like to play and how deep they are, you don't expect it. We didn't expect to run away with it, I don't think. We had been in a really similar situation at North Central. We had, I hit 3 or 4 threes at the beginning of the game, and we got up 15-4 or something like that. And, they took the lead within probably 3 or 4 minutes. So we didn't expect to run away with it at all. We just expected the counter punch from them, and obviously they landed a pretty big one.
I would add, Rusty, we actually aren't hitting on all cylinders here. Aston is. And so the concern I would have is, even as great as he is, it's hard to sustain what's happening here. We actually aren't getting great looks. He's simply making great plays. So compare that to the previous night, last night, where we were getting great looks and weren't making them. In some ways, I was actually more comfortable with what was happening last night than what was happening here, because even, it's just hard to sustain that through the course of the game. I actually at one point looked at Aston and said, you're not going to get 65 tonight or something like that. I mean, as the game progresses, it got pretty close. But that would be my biggest concern, is can we sustain this? Because right now we're really riding the back of Aston's offensive performance.
Is that something you tell your guys, Mike, that you feel like, or is that something you kind of say, let that carry us for as long as it can, and maybe we'll find our rhythm?
Yeah, I don't say it. The concern I would have is we're up 20-16, or 20-15, but compared to what was happening last night, we actually weren't stopping them. So we were up by 5 more because of the unique play of Aston, which, was just otherworldly, but we weren't stopping them. And so, they were, they would have the same feeling right now that we had last night, which is we haven't played real well. One guy's gone absolutely nuts and we're only down 3 points. That's what I was feeling. I wouldn't say it out loud, but it's definitely a sense of this feels better than it really is because of how it's happening. And you can see here, I'm trying to run a set to get somebody else a basket, simply to get somebody else involved and get somebody else comfortable. So that's what I was thinking at the time.
You talked last night about having to put in signals for your plays because the gym was so loud, and we saw Luke tapping the top of his head here. When did you guys figure out that they had your signals down and that you could kind of go back to how you've been doing it all year?
Yeah, right away. So it's going to be at this next media timeout that I tell them, hey, they know our signals because they scouted us real well from the night before, but they probably don't know the actual play calls. And obviously, as we were joking last night, we were going to be able to hear each other tonight. So we just went back to calling, calling the plays verbally as opposed to the hand signals, which they knew. So it's not something I actually even thought of going into the game that that they would have those from watching on scouting. So it took me the 8 minutes to kind of go, yeah, we need to just go back to our normal communication.
Anajuwon Spencer grabs the rebound, and we're going to have a foul on the Pioneers. So we're seeing Aston Francis obviously get going, but Dan, I think it's important that Anajuwon Spencer too. The Thunder.
Jay, obviously we talked about at the top them being very deep. They went 10, 11 deep, but for you guys, as often as they sub, what stress does that put on you guys when you've got that many different skill sets and personnel types and combinations to assess and figure out who's on the floor at the same time?
For me, personally, it wasn't too much different from my whole career. Coach was pretty used to putting me on a different type of player every night. So I was used to seeing multiple different people, even in the same games. I was ready to guard anybody, and that's one thing I love. I love knowing the scouting report and things like that, to know exactly what everybody does, just because I love to roam around and help. So if I know what everybody loves to do, that helps me a little bit more. And as far as my teammates go, I think for most of them, they were pretty set on who they would be guarding, so they weren't pretty stressed out about it. So it just kind of worked all in our favor that we all were pretty comfortable in, like, our different roles on the team and where we'd be slotted for that night.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit tougher for some of the guards. I think Luke had his main matchup was the Isley kid, the point guard number 13. But I know for me, I had to guard the kid who just shot right there, who was a quick guard, liked to penetrate, and then with the other group, I had a shooter who wasn't nearly as quick. So it was a tough adjustment switching between those two, especially for a guy who's already defensively challenged. So I was relying on people like Jay to help me once the little guy got by me.
Good evening, Luke Anthony.
Hello, guys.
Luke, things have been very calm here in the first half.
That's good to know. How's our attitude? Pretty calm too to start.
I was not calm prior to this game, LA. I can tell you this was one of the most nervous I've been for a game in my entire coaching career.
Yeah,
which doesn't mean you guys felt that way, but that's how I felt.
LA, let me ask you. You obviously, we talked last night about not being out of basketball for a while, but those big game butterflies, do they hit a little different when it's something that you haven't been as used to?
No, I honestly wouldn't say so. I mean, this game, as you can see, there's like no one in the stands compared to like the game before. So I just remember like, hey, like I felt pretty confident going into this game because we watched Marietta play some green team the night before. Honestly, I forgot the name. But I just remember thinking like, yeah, we can beat these guys. We get past Augie. Like, we can definitely beat these guys. And once we got past Augie, I was pretty excited to be able to play them and then have a chance to go to the Final Four.
They could have curled up and gone away. Marietta's fought back, hung in this, and good ball game here so far at the Carver Center. Anthony makes both free throws to put Wheaton up by 4. Now Krieger back in, low post. He's had
How much of a feeling out period is there for a team like Marietta? Obviously, the OAC is a very tough and physical conference, and you guys play in a physical conference as well. But at what point do you start to really feel comfortable with who they are as a team?
As you can see, one point there, that was the third time they had ran that play to number 5. And by that time, I kind of knew what he liked to do. I kind of knew how he was about to bump me off to try to get the space. And JP had, when I had came out the game the first time, JP had came and talked to me about how to play him and stuff like that. So by this time in the first quarter, I would say now it's at 9 minutes in, you kind of get the feel of like their tendencies and how they like to go about playing and different things and how they play off each other if you're really paying attention to them. So by this time, we start to kind of get used to them, but they were a really good team. So they, of course, were going to knock down shots.
Yeah, Rusty, I don't know that we ever got comfortable with them. We really struggled to stop them the whole night. And they posed, matchup problems all over the floor for us. And so I think we got comfortable in ways to get some offense. Like I said, they played us pretty straight up the whole night. And you can see we take advantage of that in a lot of places, but we struggled to stop them. They're just a very, very good offensive basketball team.
Obviously, we see them pushing a lot, and at this point, for this season in the CCIW, that's a tempo that really didn't seem to be there. How different is it to play against that kind of fast break team where you hadn't quite seen that all year, because Elmhurst's tempo came more in the offseason following this season?
It was tough. I know I was gassed at the end of the first half and then about halfway through the second half, and I think we had some timeouts towards the end of the game where we kind of caught our breath. But I specifically remember, not having played teams that play that fast, and especially having to do it on the back end of a back-to-back. My legs were just about fried in the second half. So it's a pretty tough adjustment to play a team that plays that fast constantly.
Yeah, I remember they were 5 in, 5 out, and that was like really surprising for me to see. And I just remember thinking back, like, there's no way they could go like 5 in, 5 out, and all be good players. But then they actually all were really good players. So it was definitely tiring as the game progressed because they were just hockey subbing every 5 or 10 minutes.
I was real thankful for times like these during the night when Gav and Kobe would get to play and I got to get a breather because when Coach started to extend me a little bit, I was starting to feel it in my legs.
Luke, like you mentioned, you get down. Normally, you get the scouting report. You get down to 7, 8, 9. You can kind of say, all right, well, that's your role player guy, 3-and-D type. But I mean, how quickly do you learn that maybe we shouldn't have slept on the bottom of the scouting report with this team?
Yeah, I mean, I still remember like when they had their second rotation come in, and they didn't skip a beat. They played just as hard as the first rotation. I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be a long game. And I just remember like being like, wow, these guys are like they're gonna have 10 players play double minutes or double digit minutes, which is not normal. Usually you'd have if you usually play 10 guys, you have 2 guys that play single digit, but they were all double digit minutes, all pretty equal, and they're all pretty good players for the most part.
It kind of reminded me of our team is like we say we got guys like that could start that just have to sit on the bench because of how many guys we got on the team. Like for instance, this team before this game, Spencer was starting for Kobe, but Kobe stepped in and started right away. LA could have filled in for one of the guards easily, and so on and so forth. But they kind of redefined that with theirs as far as their leading scorers coming off their bench and people actually probably feeling like they should start and get that first group recognition and not being able to. But it was a pretty interesting situation, something like I've never seen before.
Even they haven't scored here for a little bit, Rusty, but they've kind of got us on skates a little bit. We're late rotation. They're pushing in transition, forcing rotations, and are simply missing shots. And, even though we were ahead, I started to think, man, it's going to be important for us to have the lead at halftime and try to fight for that, because it feels like a little bit like last night in the other way. It feels like we should be up by more than 2 points because of the, just how well Aston has played. But it's been a little bit of a struggle for us, and we have not really slowed them. They've kind of got us scrambling around a little bit here defensively. And getting pretty good looks at the basket, and eventually they're going to start, knocking some of these in.
Yeah, you guys are stuck in the middle of what's going to end up being a 4-minute scoring drought here. When you guys are in the middle of this, in a game like this, we've got so many possessions. There's got to be an emotional toll to that when you're just not seeing the ball go in.
Oh, that was a bad pass. Yeah. I tried to thread the needle there. Yeah, I think, you try and stay consistent, stay with what you've been doing. I don't think we were getting terrible looks. I know Kobe's had a couple good looks at 3 and had a drive there where it looked like he got fouled. So you just keep grinding away in the offense and keep moving the ball and just try and get good shots and hope that they eventually go down.
I don't know. I never really worried a ton with this team in terms of drought scoring, because we took so many threes. Aston took so many perimeter shots. We were going to have some stretches where we went 4 minutes or so without putting the ball in the basket, but usually that got straightened out. So I never worried about it a whole lot because we were going to eventually start knocking shots down again most nights.
At this point, you get to the under 8 media timeout. You've led by as many as 8, but they're on an 18-9 run here to close the gap. Does that start to the weight of that, given where you're at in the postseason run? Do you start to feel that a little bit?
Yeah, the biggest concern I have here, once you get into the game, all of the meaning, that weight of that kind of goes away, and it just becomes a quote unquote basketball game. And I think as a coach, you're just coaching a game as though it's normal. The difficult thing, and I'll go back to it, is we're tied here, but we have not stopped them consistently. And so that would be my biggest concern is we're going to have one of two things happen. Either we're going to have to get to 90 tonight to win, or we're going to have to make some sort of adjustment to stop them. And as the game progresses, obviously you realize what we're going to go to by going smaller and putting 4 guards and Jay for much of the second half. It becomes a night that we're going to try to score 90 and win. And, the point we made that decision, the game is, I think we're down 12, 14 points in the second half when I finally go, this is what we're going to try to do. And it could have gone south too, but we had to try something. The biggest concern I have right now is just we have not consistently stopped them. And so to win the game, we've got to come up with, some way else to score or figure out other ways to stop them. It's going to be that weight is going to carry on as the game progresses.
And Thunder need to get it going because they have not got anything from Anajuwon Spencer, Kobe Eichelberger. It's been all Aston Francis. As we said in the pregame, that's pretty much what these teams have done this year. Marietta very balanced,
and I think one of the things you think through as a coach, you always wonder if guys. So Gavin was great last night, is played fine tonight, yet he's going to be one of the ones that ends up losing playing time, which has absolutely nothing to do with him. And as a coach, you kind of wonder if guys are processing that in real time, and because we're going to have to play smaller simply to win on this particular evening, which has nothing to do with whether I think he's playing well or not. But we needed to make some adjustments just to give ourselves a chance to score a few more points and create some matchups that will give them problems.
Richardson's going to get open three. Illegal three there. It's going to be waved off. Going to get out. Let's see. Just a second. He got foul trouble last night, if I recall correctly. Paul's got 2 now. Wallace has 2 on the Wheaton side of things.
Is there a little bit of a lull that you guys start to hit on the floor here where you've gotten past the initial adrenaline surge that's carried you from the night before, and with their tempo, is there a valley that you hit before the adrenaline can kind of rev up again in the second half?
Oh, yeah, definitely. For me, I can remember at some points I'm just thinking about just keep moving, just keep getting to that next spot. Don't worry about how much time is left on the clock. Just keep focused in on what's going on in the game, because if I start focused on how tired I was and how much my legs were killing me at that point, then it would have been all over from there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember. I don't remember the specific time in the game. There was a stretch where we were all pretty exhausted, especially because the night before was just so draining, and mentally and physically, because the gym was so hot. Like, I remember we all came back and just drank 10 bottles of water. But I do remember there was a couple lulls in this game where I'm like, oh my goodness, my legs are gone. And it felt like everyone else was breathing heavy, hands on knees. And then sometime in the second half, I think Aston was a big part, not gonna lie. But we just pushed through and
Yeah, I think there was definitely at certain points in the first half, and then about midway through the second half, you look up at the clock and you're like, good Lord, it's still that much time left. You expect there to be 2 or 3 minutes, and there's still 6. And so I think probably has to do with just the pace that they play at and how many possessions. It just felt like more time had come off the clock. And if anything, the tendency would be that the time goes faster than you would think. You look up and there's 2 minutes left and it feels like there's 5 or 6, but it was kind of the other way around this game. So I think that may have had something to do with why we all got so fatigued, is that mentally we kind of thought we were further along in the game than we really were.
Yeah, and Marietta the night before did not play Augie at their home court. They played – who was it, Coach? Was it Norbert? I don't know. It's a green team. That's all I remember.
Oswego
State.
They were not very good, not going to lie.
Come on. You didn't do your homework before this, LA? Come on, man.
I forgot, dude. It's been a year or something.
Jay, obviously that pass backfires in that scenario, but you play with Aston enough times. How do you tell yourself and talk yourself to always expect the ball in a pass like that? It's never off the table when you're playing off the ball and Aston's on the floor.
See, for most of my high school career, and then especially going into college playing with Aston, I've played with sort of ball dominant guards, and knowing that their preference is to shoot rather than pass. And there's been times that me and Aston just look back and we just laugh about some of the missed passes and things like that, because I would be fully expecting him to go up and score it, but he'd be like, okay, I'm getting in the air and I see that he's open, he has a better shot than I'm about to take. He'll dish it off to me at the last second. And things like that is just I don't think we'll ever like get those down, but over time we definitely had less of those just because we got to play with each other and know each other a little bit better.
We're right at 4 minutes. We're going to take a media timeout, Chris. And Wheaton leads at 38.
I'm sure this break feels like for you guys, like you just talked about, that this should be halftime at this point. And this is probably one of those spots where you said, good grief, we still have another 4 minutes to go here before we actually get the break.
Yeah, I can tell you again, I'm, much like last night, you're starting to you really coach halves similar to the end of the first half, similar to an end of a game. You're trying to make sure that you manage these 4 minutes as best you can, trying to get to halftime here with a lead. And that's really where the focus is if we can get there. But it feels like there's so many possessions because of the way the game is being played. The 4 minutes tonight is going to be very different than the 4 minutes last night because there's just going to be so many more possessions in this game than there was the previous night.
We touched on him a little bit last night. We've seen Tyson Cruikshank running the point. With the 4-guard lineup, there's a lot more pressure put on him and Ye to be productive and get a lot of meaningful minutes. What throughout the season gave you the confidence with these guys that in the Elite Eight you can lean on them for heavy minutes as freshmen?
Well, the biggest thing with Tyson is he's one of the few freshmen I've ever coached who came in ready to compete at the appropriate level in practice. He never backed down. He obviously physically wasn't always ready to do it as a freshman because of his size, but his mental toughness in practice was so good. And so I always knew with Tyson that he was, and still to this day, he was going to be ready to go. He wasn't going to back down. He might get beat, but he wasn't going to back down. So, and then Ye in this situation, one of the things I appreciated, the year he missed the previous year to this one, guys that are out with season-ending injuries, I always sort of give them the option. I always tell them they're always welcome, never expected at practice. I mean, you're out all year, and yet Ye made everything. He came to every practice. He did everything, and I was so impressed with that, and I think that really helped him. Ye was somebody we heavily recruited, obviously we saw this past year. He's just such a good player. But I thought it was so valuable for him that he didn't miss the previous season. He got something out of it, even though he was injured. So, at this point, I don't really even see Ye as a freshman in the sense because he's obviously been in the program for 2 years. And then Tyson's a pretty unique, mentally tough kid. So I was confident in their abilities, at this point, pretty substantially.
Yeah. I think from a player standpoint, we loved having both of them out there too. I know from the time Ye visited, I pulled Ye aside and gave him a little recruiting speech to try and get him, and then went and talked to coach and said, hey, this guy's going to be really good if we can get him, because he was a unique guard, especially for us. You had Luke, who liked to post up and was our defensive stopper, and then me, who's more off the ball and running off screens and stuff. And Ye is a guy who could create really well off the dribble and get by people and knew how to make plays. And so he was great. And I hated not having him our junior year because I knew he could have, had the same production kind of that he had this year. And then Tyson was just scrappy from the first day of pickup. He wouldn't back down to anybody and started being one of the first guys picked up when we would play our captain's pickup or whatever you want to call it in the off season. So he's just a guy that you wanted out there because he liked the moment. He hit big shots. There were times throughout the season that he would get big looks in the middle of runs against conference opponents and just knock them down and wouldn't bat an eye at the moment. So both those guys we were real comfortable with.
One more thing with that, Rusty, and obviously we'll get back to is when the coaching staff made the decision that we were going to give Luke Anthony an opportunity, even though he had only been in the program for about a week, the two guys I knew were going to be the most impacted by it were Ye and Tyson, because if he was going to get playing time, and to their credit, that was never an issue. And it was just never an issue, which speaks to their character as much as their toughness. And yeah, I mean, I kind of marveled at that neither one of it was just never an issue. So the moment right now, like I said, we're trying to fight to be ahead. I think it's important to try to be ahead here at halftime. And just because of the way the game is played, it feels like we should be up by more. Because we've made what feels like so many great plays. Aston's made so many great plays, and yet here we are fighting to even have the lead at halftime.
Just watching their reaction from that defensive stop of the ball going off, defensively they seem to be – I mean, the reactions are different. Like, this is a team that you can tell is valuing every single possession on both ends. And just to take a defensive stop in the first half, that seriously tells you exactly the opponent you're up against here.
All right, they're really good.
Yeah.
And I feel like this was an important possession here.
Hawkins flattens out, and Francis pulls up from long range, no good. Hawkins gets the rebound, throws up the three, no good. Tipped around, and Ledic's going to pull down the rebound. Peter's got a hand on his three-quarter court.
So as you guys head off the floor here, chasing two, Mike, I assume that's kind of what you talked about, that we've made some impressive plays, but it's a little hollow going into halftime down two.
Yeah, I was very concerned. I didn't feel like, I think Aston has 35 or 37 of our 43, something like that. And while that's remarkable from a pure strategic and coaching standpoint, it's obviously dangerous. You're already losing. He can't produce that same half again. So we're going to have some other people step up and eventually find a way to stop them. We actually don't find a way to stop them. What we do get is LA is going to hit some huge shots here in the second half. Ye's going to make a couple really big plays himself. We're going to get some other people to get a few points at some big moments that will obviously lead up to the heroics of Aston down the stretch.
We are at halftime of Wheaton's Elite Eight game in 2019 against Marietta. Wheaton trailing 45-43. And you guys head to the locker room here. What's the feeling as you guys wait for Coach Schauer to come in? What are you guys talking amongst yourselves and telling each other here?
I remember one thing that's being said is like the census is that we've come too far to like give it up now. We're not in a bad position, and we know we haven't played well up to this point. So we're kind of comfortable and knowing that we can turn it around because it's like we said, we've done it so many times before. And we all, like, personally me, I knew Aston was hot and I knew he wasn't going cold anytime soon. It's just those days, just playing with him enough, when he's hit a few and some of the ones that because he wasn't taking too many like ridiculous shots. He was just pulling up and hitting it right in their face over and over again. So I kind of knew that wasn't going to stop. So I knew we were in a pretty good position, but I didn't know it was going to go how it did in the second half.
Yeah, I think we just said, I think I remember saying, obviously I was playing well but I thought the rest of our team and our team as a whole wasn't playing that well. And I said, look, I didn't expect to do the same thing in the second half. And I said, look, we're going to have to pick it up. Just like last night, we didn't play well in the first half. We're going to have to pick it up and just keep playing our game in the second half, and eventually things will start going our way. And so I don't think we were discouraged or anything at all. I think we were excited to get back out there because historically in the season, we were a really good second half team. A lot of times we would go down 5 or 7 going into halftime and then come out and make little runs. So I think we were fully expected to do that.
Yeah, there was definitely no discouragement in the locker room. I felt like we were all just pretty excited to just get back out there and, keep on fighting.
Mike, do you recall what if any? I don't know if you can. If you recall what you told your team here at halftime?
Yeah, I don't recall exactly, but I'm sure it probably was something along the lines of, if they get to 90, we got to keep them in the 80s somewhere. They can't score 45 again, and then we've got to find some offense other than Aston, which isn't necessarily claiming that I think Aston was shooting too much or being selfish, but we would have to find some place to go besides him offensively. That's probably the two things that I mentioned the most. Anytime you're in a game that's 45-43, you start to go, that's a lot of points that you're going to have to account for if they continue to score at that pace.
Aston, do you recall, did you have any awareness of where you were scoring-wise in the first half? You finished the first half with 7 threes. You're at 35 here. Do you remember that at home?
I had no idea. I remember at the end of the game, I had no idea that I had 60, and Trevor Gunner came up and hit me in the chest and was like, "You dropped 62 on these boys." And I was like, "Get out of here." No, I didn't. I knew I had a lot, but I didn't think that I had that many in the first half or at the end of the game.
One of the things, again, you talk about, sort of the coaching strategy. One of the first things I'm watching to start the second half here is, have they made any adjustment on Aston and how they're going to play him defensively? I mean, he's got 35, and they didn't. That first possession was, again, just really straight up and going to play him normally. That's one of the first things I'm going to watch that whole season, is the teams make adjustments to Aston as the game progresses, and they really don't do much tangible change to the way they're playing Aston in terms of doubling or that sort of stuff. But again, go back to what I talked about coming out of the half, is we've given up 5 quick points here again. So sort of this how are we going to stop them and or get to a point total that we can win the game from, is what I'm thinking through right now.
Mike, you had mentioned last night you had not had the chance to watch that Augie game as a whole. Have you had a chance to watch this game since, or is this your first time all the way through again?
Yeah, first time all the way through again. I've watched more clips of this game because we've obviously used some of it in the recruiting process than I did of the Augustana game. So I've watched a little bit more of this game, but not beginning to end. So.
All along for the bucket, all day, every day.
You talked last night, Mike, about how you loathe to use these kind of timeouts as you hit a run, but you're quickly down 9. The halftime fuzzy feeling has worn off. I mean, this has to be a tough huddle to deal with emotionally here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember exactly what I said. You're right. I don't like taking these timeouts because your team is coming over a little discouraged. These are big possessions when you come out of timeouts. You've got to have some sort of offensive presence here and get a good look at the basket and hopefully score. But my biggest concern remains the same, and that is we have now played 22 minutes and we have not stopped them. And we really won't the whole night. They're tremendous. And, it's fortunately for us, and I'm going to start to say this throughout the second half, the pace of play is going to make this 9-point lead be a little less than it is against certain people, because there's going to be so many possessions, and that's going to become really important as we make our comeback here.
Does the defensive frustration start to weigh on you guys as players at all as this wears on?
I don't think so. I think you kind of expect it to level out. I think they're probably shooting a pretty good percentage. And so you just kind of expect it to average out at some point. The same way that when we go scoreless for 4 or 5 minutes, we expect to hit the next few shots and go on a little run. So we were fully expecting, like I said earlier, if they throw a punch, we're going to come right back with a counter and vice versa. So I don't think we were discouraged by it at all.
That possession right there, Rusty, we actually ran a play we ran quite a few times in this tournament run, and it's really a play that is for Luke Anthony. It feels like it's going to be to Aston, but it's not. Aston's really a decoy, and we bring Luke off a screen that Aston has just curled. And, one of the things, because of how dominant Aston was during this run, is one of the things that gets lost a little bit is how many shots Luke hit that were just enormous shots. And, I said before, here we find ourselves down 9. We've got to have an offensive answer, and we're going to run a play. I know we're going to get a shot because we're going to go away from Aston, but you got to have somebody willing and able to make that one. He's going to have a couple more in this game, but that one was enormous.
Kruger's a sophomore, Isley's a freshman, Henning's a junior, so if there's Marietta team for a couple of years. That was the sophomore, right? Yeah, so Isley hits full free throws, and Marietta leads at 54-46, 17-19 to play in this one.
I think it probably got a little bit overlooked last night because he had the foul trouble against Augustinium, but with a guy like Luke Peters running the point, what sense of calm does that bring you for a guy that's been in that position for 4 years and knows your offense forward and backwards?
Well, if I'm, me, Rusty, well enough to know that I don't know how to not. The truth is, Luke was actually anything but calm this second half. He actually was pretty uptight in the second half. Luke is a really competitive kid and gets a little bit emotional here at times because truthfully, this type of game is not. He's a defensive-minded person, and not that he's struggling defensively at all necessarily, but we are. So, but we're so veteran on Luke has just played in so many games by this point that he's going to be fine. But he was pretty wound up at points tonight.
Kick out by Krieger. Olling's going to hoist another three. Marietta dominating the board. Dixon with the rebound. Schuler gets a look from 3, knocks it down. Like we talked last night, we were frustrated with Augie giving up second opportunities to Wheaton.
So at this point, they've started the second half on a 13-3 run, and you guys are facing your biggest deficit in a couple weeks. How do you try? If at this point it starts to feel like this is a runaway freight train of momentum, how do you try to put the brakes on this here as you get to the media timeout?
Yeah, so this is the moment right here. I'm going to look at my coaching staff and say we got to try something. It might not work, but what we're doing right now, where we're at in the game, this isn't going to work. We're going to get beat if this train continues down this track. So we're starting to have a conversation of what we're going to try to do that gives us a chance, and ultimately we're going to put a lineup on the floor here pretty quickly in the next couple minutes. That's going to kind of play with a I don't sub very much down the stretch here. After we get to maybe the 12 or 14 minute mark, we're going to go a little smaller and try to put offense on the floor because I'm not completely convinced that we're going to stop them enough. Now the idea of keeping them from a big number is tough. They're at 60 with 15 minutes left to go in the second half. So what I'm thinking about is remind my team there's going to be a lot of possessions left. There's going to be a lot of possessions. This game is actually a little closer than it feels. And then privately with the coaching staff, I'm starting to think through, what do we need to do to just give a little different look on the floor?
Yeah, I remember. I remember at this point, this was like kind of like an unspoken moment for me. Like everybody's mindset changed as far as like what coach has said. If we don't do something right now, we're not going to win. And I remember just thinking to myself, me personally, I never expected to do anything much on offense, but I knew as far as defensively, as far as being an anchor, I could do something back there. So I was focused in on like being able to help my guys rotate and give my guards help off because I knew they were going to be the ones that was going to end up knocking down the shots to put us back into this.
Yeah, I specifically remember Coach saying a lot that it was more like a 6-point game than a 10 to 12-point game, just because it was so fast and there was going to be so many possessions. So we weren't panicked at all. And like I said, we just expected everything to average out. And I think it gets a little choppy here, which plays to our benefit because it kind of stops their run and stops their momentum because they start fouling. We get in the bonus early. So that really helped us out because they were getting a lot of their points in transition and kind of getting us scrambled on defense. And I think once we got it to slow down a little bit by getting to the line, it helped us out a lot.
Yeah, at some point here in the second, as these you mentioned the fouls, as you start to mount up, does it become more of an effort to just drive the ball and try to get the ball stopped so you can shoot free throws, but also get those points with the clock stopped?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just want to be aggressive, especially a guard. You want to drive. And, for me, I got lucky. I think they fouled me on a couple threes just because they were so trying to contest so hard that some of them were a little wild and they got body contact on it. But, yeah, as a guard, you just want to be aggressive and play that to your advantage, try and go get a call that maybe you wouldn't normally get.
Especially with the defense, they were very aggressive defensively minded team. So just usually when that happens, it causes you to get more aggressive on the offensive side as well. I feel like that's what we just really started doing in the second half because they just got more and more aggressive. And then we just got more and more foul calls because of their aggressiveness.
We talk about it a little bit as broadcasters, but as players, this 10-point barrier, is that a real thing for you guys when you're on the floor and the mental push of trying to get that back to single digits?
I think it looks cleaner, obviously, and probably feels a little bit safer, but I've always focused more on possessions. Like how many possessions would it take for us to get back? So ideally you do that with threes, but realistically you're not going to make 4 threes in a row and take a 2-point lead. So it's just playing it as if we can cut it down to 2 possessions and then get it down to 1 possession and then try and take the lead or tie it up rather than focus on, how many points we're down.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely adding to that. I also think about like the time and how many possessions are left in the game too. Especially with this type of game, we were getting up and down the court so much. You would think we were having about 3 to 4 possessions a minute instead of the 2 to 3 that you normally get in a normal college game. So I'm thinking try to slow the game down a little bit, slow their pace down. So we can get better looks, but then also making sure we're running them off their spot, so they're not converting in what they're trying to do. Stupid foul. Stupid foul.
And we're going to start to fight a little foul trouble here too. I think LA is going to get in some foul trouble. We're going to have to kind of manage Jay's foul trouble here a little bit. And now here is where, because of that foul trouble, we start to go with 4 guards, which I don't remember. I don't think we did this very often prior to this moment. And it's sort of a statement of this, we're going to kind of put our fastest, if that's the right way to say it, and our most diverse offensive teams on the floor. And this group of 4 guards, with a little bit of exception because LA gets in foul trouble, plays a pretty good chunk of these remaining minutes.
Coach, Gavin's on the floor right there. You said fastest.
Right there.
You said fastest. Gav's
cool.
out there.
That's
So
cool.
are you. So
With
I
that
guess
late,
that,
too.
that also
That's true.
just proves the point.
With that
I
late,
can't
too.
say too much. Can't say too much. We need Tyson out there.
But I think one of the things, Rusty, that, watching it, in replay here, back to back from the previous night is, in real time, I don't know that I really appreciated, although I understood it, just how deep this team was. We're going to win back-to-back nights with two very different styles of play and me playing two very different lineups on the floor for those stretches. And it gives us quite a bit of versatility. I realize how deep this team is, which you obviously need to be to have a chance to advance as far as it did.
Is there ever a point here you see like an uncharacteristic turnover in communication between two seniors? Is there ever a point where you say, hey, maybe this just isn't our night, that they're hitting on everything on offense and we just can't seem to get on the same page?
I don't know. I think you really fight it, to be honest. I don't know that I ever felt that way, but boy, you fight it. You do. But in real time, you're just trying to focus so hard as a coach that just trying to help your team find something that gives it a little bit of momentum and energy, and just waiting for a moment that maybe something can happen that kind of breaks the struggle. And again, like I said before, we're going to have a stretch here where Ye and LA and some others are going to make some pretty important offensive plays to kind of keep us competitive until Aston will take over, obviously, down the stretch.
Yeah, I think for us it was just keeping composure, because it's very, very easy to feel like your back's against the wall, and then if one little thing goes wrong, you overreact, and it just kind of snowballs. And I think we did a really good job, and the media timeouts help with this, of being able to just compose ourselves and not overreact to any of the runs they were making or some of the shots that they were hitting. And then some of them kind of played to their disadvantage because they were really excited through this stretch. You can tell when they get a bucket, there was a couple guys that really celebrate and really get excited, and that takes a little more energy out of them. So I think that we were able to capitalize with that because we were a little more composed down the stretch here.
Mike, you had talked last night about some timeout strategy, and this time the media timeout kind of falls into that, where you guys have battled it back to 10 now, and then you get to the media timeout and it's right back to 12, and you've just run out of a couple minutes. Does that set in at all in this scenario?
Yeah, a little bit. Although I'm at this point, what I'm thankful for is because of the media timeouts, I have more ability than I would in a quote unquote regular season game of extending this group of guys a little bit. And so because I know we're going to have some built-in timeouts that are going to let Aston and Luke and Jay and some of these guys get some breaks in the momentum, that the media timeouts changes your strategy just a little bit because I know those stoppages of play are coming.
Checks out. The Krieger that came back in. Yep. Francis hits all three. He's got 40 now. I would say you got Spencer guarding Krieger to get the ball to him and draw that fourth foul, but Spencer really hasn't done that much. A beautiful pass out of the post. Krieger hits a cutting with Dick for an easy layup.
And Krieger was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still connected with that guy today. He's a really good dude and a really good player. He was this year would have been his senior season. He was pretty upset with the whole COVID thing and things like that.
Were they still in it?
From the way he was talking, they had a shot at making the tournament still. So, but
I think they lost in the first round, didn't they?
Did they?
Oh, okay.
Actually, another, last night, if you remember, Luke Anthony had a rebound and put back, another big rebound and opportunity to get to the foul line here. All these moments are just, they end up being so crucial because you're just trying to survive right now. You're just thinking, give ourselves a chance, make enough plays to give ourselves a chance. And so all of these moments are pretty significant.
To get Wheaton back within 9, 11:18 to play. 66-57 Marietta.
As you guys rewatch this as players, do you ever reach a point where you look at the mat and say, man, we're down 10 with 11 minutes left, and you kind of surprise yourself with where this thing ends up?
Now Anthony tries to come around and get the steal, but he's
That was a dumb foul right there.
No, I'm never surprised at the outcome. I'm never surprised when we make a comeback and win or do things like that, because I always expect us to. Even looking back on them, I always expected us to do it. And even when we lose in situations like that, I expect us to come out on top. So it was more of how we got there. You don't expect Aston to come down and hit that shot. Well, we do, because he practiced it and we know the story behind him practicing the shot and things like that. But you never expect it to unfold that way. You never expected. That's why we practice so many different scenarios and different things during our own personal workouts, and then during team practices to prepare for every situation that we can think of.
Yeah, so I'm sure you thought that shot was going in.
I think I knew when it left my hands it probably wasn't, but that'd been cool.
Again, we talked a little bit about Trevor here. We're down to 10 minutes of an Elite Eight game. He hasn't played a ton, but because we're gonna get in a little bit of foul trouble, and I want to keep guards on the floor, Trevor gives us some really valuable minutes here on the floor. Because we got Jay with a little bit of foul trouble, and again, that's as I watch these games back to back, just realize how deep this team really was.
You had mentioned last night he had some knee issues coming in. Where's his health at on the back end of a back to back?
Yeah, actually, he sprained his ankle pretty bad, and probably 2 weeks before this, and not that he couldn't play on it, but he just wasn't 100%. And so, I got to be honest with you, Rusty, I never asked him. I knew he would give me everything he had, and would contribute defensively and execute the scouting report defensively, execute offensively. Obviously, this was a big play right here, because now you're starting to look around and do the same thing in reverse from what they did in the first half, which is you kind of go, well, wait a minute, right? Wasn't this just 14? Now it's 7. We still got 9 minutes to go. You're starting to feel like they should feel, they got to feel like maybe they should be up by more than they are.
At this point, we're on a 17-8 run, and we're feeling good.
So that's Jay's 4th foul, and so that's one of the things I'm thinking now is how do we manage that? And one of the ways I'm going to manage it is to keep 4 guards on the floor for most of the rest of this half.
Drives the basket, throws it up for Krieger, couldn't get it, but Levitt comes out with it. 4 on the shot clock. Schuler hoists one out of the corner. Can't get it to go, but guess who on the board? And he's going to get a 3-pointer.
You guys fight yourself back to 7, and they're going to get it back to double digits here. I'm sure that feels like a little bit of a gut punch with that ball goes in.
It definitely was, because I think we did pretty good defensively, and then he comes out of nowhere, gets a rebound and one. Right when we thought we were about to get the possession back.
And now LA's got 4 too, Mike. So
yep.
I'm sure you start to feel like your options are stretched a little bit at this point.
Yeah, no question. And again, I'm starting to, they got 71 with, by about 9 minutes to go in the game. The big thing is can we find ways to stop them and some of those types of things. the interesting thing here is they continue to just play Aston straight up, which is something that, you know, is interesting because obviously teams that played us regularly would not do that. And so, you know, I knew we could get him some shots at the basket from time to time as well.
Aston, they're throwing some different bodies at you as they go through these rotations. Do you start to find any trends as far as how each different guy is handling you as you come off these screens?
I think they all played pretty similar defensively. They and by that time, you know, we had seen everything. I had 6'8", 5'8", 6'2", 6'4", you know, athletic, more physical guys. The main thing I noticed was that they were super aggressive and a little wild on some of their contests. And so you can see some of these shot fakes. I can get them up in the air and kind of get by them with one or two dribbles. And then, like I said, they fouled some of those shots because they're trying so hard to get out there and contest and even block the shot. So it played to our advantage for sure and got some easy ones at the line. I know there was normally like 1-3 a game I would get fouled on. I think there's 3 or 4 in this game.
And this is going to start to play out a little bit too here, Rusty. You know, we make a great comeback. They missed some really important free throws during this last 8-minute stretch.
Mike, you go with Kobe at the 5 here. Is that kind of just out of circumstance and foul trouble, or is that just more continuing to try to get your 5 most diverse offensive guys out there?
Yeah, I am trying to get you know, the defensive matchups help a little bit if we stay small, but I am still searching for something to kind of give us a little bit of a spark, and so I go pretty small here. I think, you know, I leave Luke in the game because we're kind of rolling the dice, you know, and so we had not played this type of lineup very much. It also speaks to a little bit of the versatility of Luke Peters that he can guard so many different spots on the floor. But, you know, we're kind of just looking for something to give us a chance. I think in this media timeout, that's the biggest thing I'm telling guys is, besides the fact that it's a little closer than it feels, is just keep fighting to give us a chance. And I really believe we were going to get a chance. It was whether we were going to be able to make those plays once we got there.
Given the pace and that there's always a little more energy spent when you're trying to catch up, where are the legs at right now for you guys in this one?
This is probably about the time where we started to feel it, or at least I did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, throughout the tournament, the second game, I was normally pretty sore. You know, especially the left leg was pretty sore. And so this one, I remember I was really starting to feel it around like the 10-minute mark, probably till about the 5-minute mark. And then as the game started to slow down, you catch your breath and get a couple more breaks with those media timeouts and you know, kind of got a second win.
Yeah. It was definitely like the second win time. I remember being extremely tired right before this. And then after that media timeout, you know, you kind of just like, hey, well, this is it. You got to give everything you got, you know. So I remember, like, coming out of that media timeout, seeing we were down 10. I mean, I feel like a lot of the guys out there just got the second win. And I honestly didn't feel – I felt a lot more tired before the media timeout than I did after.
Aston, you mentioned the left leg, and it was kind of kept under wraps that you were playing most of the season with an injury, with a stress fracture. How much does that play a role, especially now that you're going back-to-backs in the tournament format and the recovery time and now with the tempo? How's all that adding up?
You know, like I said, it was pretty sore, but the back-to-backs were a different animal. Normally, you know, Coach did a good job of managing everything during the week with practice and stuff, so I would have plenty of time to kind of recover from the Wednesday, Saturday games. But playing back-to-back, normally the second game didn't feel too great. But, you know, Alan and Trish, our trainers, were phenomenal last year and just kept me, one, able to play, and two, pretty pain-free for the most part. You know, I think they managed it super well. I had lights that I did, and, some compression therapy that I think helped a lot. And so they were able to keep me out there on the court.
So I think we're right in here, Rusty, and Trish and Allen are unbelievable, as you know.
Yeah.
I think somewhere in here they lose Luke Anthony, and either he's going to hit and it's when we they lose Luke Anthony right here. It's funny how I remember this, and this is the moment I went, I think we're going to win, because it's the same sensation to go. It feels like they're up 12. It's now a 5-point game. We got 6 minutes to go, and I so clearly remember that play. Obviously, like I said, I haven't watched this, but I remember that play because it's the moment in my mind I went, I think we're going to win. I thought that was, Luke hit a ton of big shots. That was a really big one as we come back. And they lose A again, and all of a sudden you start to go, interesting, a couple defensive mistakes from them, which our guys take advantage of. And now the feel is totally different than it was even 3-4 minutes ago.
Obviously, last night, packed gym, and tonight, the opposite. You've only got a couple hundred, but a pretty strong Wheaton fan base underneath the camera again. And this is where, with a neutral gym, the momentum really starts to add up. Do you start to feel a little bit as the crowd gets louder and louder behind you, and this kind of builds here through the final minutes?
Yeah, for sure. I thought our fans were great throughout the whole tournament. I mean,
if anything, it helped.
Very loud.
Yeah. If anything, it helped because, you didn't have the Augie fans drowning them out. So anytime we made a big play, that whole side kind of behind our bench would erupt and really give us some momentum, I think.
And this didn't feel as neutral as any other games that were completely neutral, as far as like Hanover or Oshkosh at the arena during the Final Four, just because we had played on Augustana's court so much, and actually not playing against Augie kind of made us feel like that, we've been here before. This is comfortable. We're comfortable in this gym. So.
Wallace with 4 on the Marietta side, 3 for Dixon, 3 for Sheila. Let's get them both. Marietta stretches the lead back to 4.
Mike, you mentioned kind of rolling the dice and extending LA here with 4 fouls. Do you, as a coach, just kind of say, well, if we sit him and we don't get it done, it's kind of a moot point anyhow?
Absolutely. You start to in games, both when you're ahead or you're behind, there are moments that you go, hey, we could, if I take a shot right now, we can end this thing and win it. There's also moments during a game you go, hey, if we don't stay in it here, we could get beat. And so there was no question at that 8-9 minute mark with Luke that I kind of went, if I sit him here, by the time I put him back in, we could be behind by a number. And so you do roll the dice to figure, you're trying to make decisions to win and not be safe. And so no question here went, you know what, this is, we've got to roll the dice to try to win. And so that's exactly why we did it.
Richardson driving, stops, finds Krieger, nice pass, lost it going up, and got it to go in. He knew he got fortunate on that one as he's wiping the handoff.
As this game continues to swing kind of into and out of a one-possession game, does there get to be added pressure on you guys like, hey, we've got a shot this time down to get even or get ahead? And what builds with each possession that you can't quite catch up?
That was a terrible call, by the way.
Yeah, it was a tough call, and pretty significant. And you just talked about rolling the dice, Rusty, and you don't anticipate that type of call to foul him out. And so, now I start to go, oh man, maybe that wasn't a real good idea because of a little bit of a ticky-tack offensive foul. And you talk about how much confidence I have and we have in Tyson. It's him that comes in the floor because I'm going to stay small. I've decided we're going to stay smaller as much as we can. And, it's a unique situation to put him in.
And I think at this point, me personally, I'm thinking stay aggressive, but don't be too aggressive to the point where I'm playing wild and end up getting a foul just because, like we just said, LA had just come off the floor and I had just come back on. So I think in that point, we already being down Spencer, then being up down LA at my point would have put it tough on guys like Luke Asnier and putting a lot of for one, defensive strain on them from losing me and Spencer already, but then also kind of up in that offense with the loss of LA.
And as they keep scoring here and you know, they keep expecting us to tie it up, but it comes later. I don't think that we ever, you know, got mad or frustrated that we couldn't tie it. You know, we still had plenty of time here, and we knew we weren't going anywhere. You know, we had fought back. We knew it was going to come down to the wire probably. And so some of these possessions, they're all really quick. None of them are backbreakers. Like it's, you know, 2 seconds on the shot clock, they hit a three or something. They're quick possessions just like they have been all game, or it's getting to the free throw line. And so we're pretty comfortable, I think, and just continuing to play like we have the whole game.
Mike, as a coach being in Marietta's situation where tempo's their game, but tempo's starting to work against them here as they go, how do you balance how you handle your offensive possessions where you kind of want to milk the clock, but it's not really what you do?
Yeah, I don't – I mean, obviously I don't know them really well, but I wouldn't have changed anything. It's what got them the lead. I think they would have struggled, you know, to hold the ball. And one of the big things is, you know, here we make a three to tie it, but it's preceded by a missed free throw. And really, had they made some of their free throws, we don't have the opportunity to win the game. They missed some pretty big free throws at moments down the stretch here. And from really, really good players.
And once again, you pull even, and they've got a shot at a three-point play. It just continues to feel like the hill gets a little bigger as you get to the top.
Uphill the whole night, you know, uphill the whole night.
And still, this game feels like it's been forever, and there's still 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that's going to happen in these 4 minutes, Rusty. So get another missed free throw. They're going to miss a few that give us a chance.
And as each possession kind of unfolds, you know the immediate timeout is coming. There's a little more – I would assume there's a little more weight that you feel on the outcome of every trip up and down the floor now.
Yes, some, although I will tell you, I know there's going to be a lot of possessions. So it's not like the normal 3-minute mark of a game. We're still going to have more possessions than we normally would.
Yeah, they didn't slow down at all. Like I said last night, if we would have been in their position, probably we would have started milking the clock a little bit and, you know, I would have gone and got it and taken the clock down up top. But they didn't change anything about the way they were playing, which I think was, again, to our advantage.
Two huge plays here by Ye. Great pass from Jay on the previous possession. Ye curling a screen, making a good hard drive to his left hand. And here we come in, you know, going, here we are. We're now ahead. And so the fight to say, hey, just give us a chance. Well, we've done that. Now it's the effort to try to close it out.
Does there feel like there's a weight that's been lifted here once you realize that you're up 2 going into this break?
For me, no. I personally felt like we were still down just because of how the game had been going and the way they had been answering. They were a team that I feel like every time we even got close, they came and hit a big three and shot us in the mouth every single time. So I was always, as you can see, they just started up again. I was just waiting for them to answer and just waiting to see how we would have to respond to how they would respond to us.
Huge basket there out of one of our set plays. Great pass from Ye. Well executed, and that call came, you know, the assistant coaches were on me to make that call at varying points during the game, and we kind of saved it there for for that possession.
Down the Pioneers a little bit. Yeah, I would agree. Haven't been able to get stops recently,
And you can see we are slowing it down here now to make it to Aston's point. We're ahead. We're going to take some time off the clock and kind of put him,
I think Francis just stepped it out of bounds. Yeah.
put him in some
Unfortunate right
isolation situations.
Yeah, they
And it was right in front of me. He did unfortunately step out of bounds, just barely, but he did.
says he cut up from the box to the wing. But
One thing to note there, Rusty, is we brought a screen, and we did that a few times earlier in the season, and by the end of this game, we go away from it and just let him have the ball. And a lot of that is to just not bring that other defender. And so it's significant to see with 2 minutes left, we brought the screen. We're going to go away from it here inside the last minute.
second half, little jump hook too short.
Right here, I'm thinking he can't score.
Away with the rebound.
That was my main focus. Don't get scored on again.
Wasn't sure whether we were going to get a foul or travel, or it turned out to be neither. It's a timeout. So with 1:31.
So you got 91 seconds left, up 2, knowing that there's still a lot that can happen given the tempo. So how, if you can remember, any of you guys, what are you feeling at this point as you hit this timeout?
I felt like we had it, because it was our ball, a minute 30. We're going to probably waste 30 seconds about off the clock. I felt like we had the momentum at this point, and we were about to get hopefully 85 or 86 to 81, and hopefully just run the clock down from that point. But I think they do end up taking the lead, and then Aston does retake the lead, with 30 seconds left, something like that. But I thought at this point, we had it. It was going to be our game. We're going to run out the clock slowly, make free throws.
I think this is the moment, Aston may remember better than I do, where we came out of a timeout and Aston grabs my arm and looks at me and just goes, "Relax, I got this." I've coached for a long time. I've never had a kid do that, and I've certainly never had a young man do that and then produce what's about to happen. But I think it was coming out of this timeout where Aston just went, "Hey, relax, I got this."
Yeah, I was just surprisingly calm, and I knew exactly what shots I wanted to shoot. I knew we weren't going to do the screen. Coach had said in the timeout, and so I knew I could get to that step back. And I think 21 is guarding me on this next possession, and I had already made this, and he fouled me earlier. So I knew I wanted to shoot that, and then obviously I had practiced the last shot a lot, and so I knew exactly what 2 shots I wanted to go to. I knew where I was going to get the ball, and so I felt pretty confident.
Yeah, so we bring the defender there that time, and it's the last time we do it for the very reason it takes away Aston's ability to go to the shot. He's going to either way, the 2 that he's going to shoot here. Give them credit. The shot they just made previously to tie it was an incredibly difficult shot. Off the move, really, really high caliber finish. So is that one. And so, they've made a lot of plays here. So we go away from the ball screen here. We take a timeout specifically to go, hey, we're gonna go away from it and run a play that is literally just an ISO play for Aston to try to give him some space, as opposed to when Jay came over, he brings his defender with him, obviously.
So you guys go from up 2 to down 2 here and now you're down to 40 seconds. Has the mood changed at all in the roughly minute that's transpired between these 2 timeouts?
I don't think so. I think we know we're going to get 2 tries at it because we were going to go and get a quick shot here and get a 2 for 1. So it's just, you're going to get 2 looks, and they're hopefully going to be decent ones, and they end up being pretty good looks, I think. And, you just have faith that you're going to execute one or both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we were definitely – throughout the game, throughout all the whole playoff run, I felt like we did a great job of just taking possession by possession and not looking at the next possession.
And again, they don't stop and milk the clock at all. I think 13 just runs down there and they try and get a quick, easy bucket. Again, they don't change the way they play at all.
Yeah, and LA just said, from moment to moment, we did pretty well at just just knowing, just like taking it possession by possession. And I wanted to give a testament to Coach on that. I think throughout the whole postseason, he kind of kept us focused on like just keeping the moment in view.
Now we're going to have another timeout. Looks like Coach Schauer maybe called it 30.
Yeah, I took a timeout here to try to give us a little bit more size defensively. I think it ends up not. I probably should have stuck with what we had on the floor. Not that subbing in Kobe, it's not Kobe's fault, but I go away. I overcoach here a little bit, Rusty. I go away from some of the stuff that we've been doing that got us the 1-point lead and kind of complicated a little more than I intended to. But I obviously felt like if we could get a stop here, we were going to win the basketball game. And I think I overcoach here a little bit.
59 of the 86 points.
And some of it is I take Tyson off the floor because of size, fearful that might be exploited. And like I said, kind of go away a little bit from what's got us here.
Necessarily go for 60 or more, but
and if we lose this game, that decision would have haunted me. So I don't know that it would have changed it, but as this plays out, I'm really frustrated that I didn't stick with what got us into this moment, but I did.
As you look at where we're at right now, does it still surprise you how much is still left to happen in this game?
Yes. But a pretty good finish. He makes a really good play. Love my team here that we don't have to take the timeout. We don't got to talk about it. We're going to go right to the same thing. This is a veteran team. And I mean, how do you describe this? We've all seen it 100 times, but it's crazy.
Jay, take us through what you're seeing on this defensive stop here.
So I'm knowing that from the last play, I got to get a help. I gotta go over and help Luke out. So as soon as I see him get beat, I just leave Tim this time, and I end up getting a block. And while I'm seeing the ball scramble on the floor, I'm just hoping one of my guys get it because, as you can see, I didn't make too much of an effort to get back into play because I was so gassed. But I think it was Ye who ended up getting it, and I was able to rely on Ye as far as defense a lot this year, just knowing that he was going to work like that. It was just kind of good just to see it. And I know everybody was talking about Aston's shot, but actually my cousin who talked about Aston's ridiculous game threw in my block when he texted me after the game, which kind of made it all the more worth it.
And it emphasizes Jay's strength. Tremendous help defender to read that play, react, not worry what could happen next, to go make the play on the ball. Significant play. And I could tell from my angle that Ye was going to get there first and just wanted this one to go in so we didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was like slow motion just seeing Ye chase down the ball. But I had a pretty good picture of it too, and just like knowing like, oh, he's about to get this, like, let's go. And then I mean, that was two pretty clutch free throws to seal the deal there by Ye, which
those make you feel a little bit safer.
And he obviously was a very clutch player for us this past year. He had a couple buzzer beaters, so he's good in the pressure, which is awesome.
Yes, he is.
When's it hit home for you guys that's it, that he hits that free throw and you're headed to the Final Four?
Honestly, as soon as he got that loose ball, like I just felt like, hey, we got, like, it's over, we won. Just had all my faith in Ye because I mean, he's proved again and again that in pressure situations he'll perform.
As you can see when I'm standing on the free throw line, I'm looking back at the bench and I'm talking, I'm hyped. So I already knew we were good before he even hit it. But then I kind of leaned down and tap over to Timothy Krieger, just somebody that I had, even though we had just met that day, built a relationship and was like congratulating him on his season. And like it was a good hard-fought game, something I'll remember for a very long time.
Yeah, I think it was when Ye got the loose ball. I didn't really celebrate too much or try to show much emotion out there, but when he got that, I got pretty hyped up because I knew he was going to make for sure one, and then once he hit the first one, I knew he was hitting the second one, and so I knew we had a really good chance there.
Yeah, Rusty, when he gets the ball on the loose ball, I'm thinking we're going to win, and then I immediately snap back and go, one of the worst things you can do as a coach is to, it's a 2-point game. There's enough that could happen. immediately, it's one of the worst things you can do as a coach is to arrive at a conclusion or a game is over before it is mathematically so. And so I immediately caught myself and went, hey, we've got to think through, what do I need to communicate to our guys here? And so, I kind of caught myself. And obviously when the second one went in, that's when I sort of emotionally let go and went, hey, we're going to the Final Four.
And that's obviously a special moment for you as someone who played in the program and has been around this program for so long to finally see Wheaton make that step.
Yeah, no question. And people remember my post-game stuff. When I played at Wheaton, we weren't very good. And if somebody had told me in 1989 or 1990 that we were going to go to a Final Four, I would have thought that was a crazy idea. And obviously, Bill Harris comes in and changes sort of the culture of the program a little bit, sets a really big vision of having a team that can go to the Final Four and win a national title. And the guys have heard me share this before. He had a couple teams that really were more deserving to go than we were. Not that we weren't, but he had two really good teams that didn't quite get there. And my mind immediately went to the previous coaches who had, who'd been the Wheaton basketball coaches, and hope that they could, particularly Coach Harris, but that they could sort of enjoy the run here that we had finally gotten there after a lot of work from a lot of people, from that late 80s on.
Aston, obviously 62 points jumps out at the box score. You guys that watched this from up close, now that you've had a chance to have some time and to see it again, how does it's hard to ask what do you even think about seeing a performance like that again and even getting to experience it in real time?
I can't really describe it. And like I said, I didn't know that I had 62 until Trevor came up and told me. It's just one of those things, you get hot early and you keep getting good shots and good looks and looks that I practice a lot. And like I said last night, the selflessness of our team to continue to try and find me shots and get me good looks, even when it's not going our way. And, it seems like it might be the wrong thing to do. And for Coach to trust me to keep shooting those shots is really, it makes me feel really good about how much they trusted me in those situations. And then the fact that I could come through and make the plays and have a good night on that sort of stage is definitely something that I'll never forget.
Yeah, I actually looked at Joel Smith kind of after we shook hands with Marietta coaches and players, and obviously there's sort of the celebration and a little bit of a moment of quiet. I look at Joel Smith and I go, "You're going to tell me he had 60, aren't you?" And he goes, "No, he had 62." And that's when it sort of registered. I'm like, what did I just watch? Like I said, when he had 54 at Platteville, I was convinced I would never see a guy do that again. And it's still, even when I say it out loud, it just doesn't, their coach, John Vanderwald, talked about it. It feels like it was a video game. And to say 62 in the Elite Eight, it kind of feels like a video game, that it's not something that can happen in real life. But it was pretty incredible. And I think I tell people all the time, I don't really keep a lot of souvenirs from my coaching days or mementos. I'm not, I don't have my 300 win ball, or I don't keep any of that stuff. I do have the basketball from that night. I still have that basketball, and I'm not going to give that one up. I've still got the basketball from the game against Marietta.
Mm-hmm.
During that game, it was kind of weird. You don't really notice that he's scoring as much because we're accustomed to seeing him put the ball in the bucket like that. But just thinking back, I remember I mentioned his name a bunch in this, but Timothy Kringer, he asked me, how is it playing with somebody like Aston, or would you like a system more like that? And at the time, of course, like I'm playing in that system, I said Aston, seeing past this year how much fun it was. Of course, me personally, just being able to move more was fun, but just being able to see somebody of his talent go off like that, not many people get to witness that in person or to say that they got to see it over and over again through the course of a season like the way we did, and to see the run that he put on that year, it was pretty special and spectacular for just to be a bystander of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I even rewatching this game right now, like I still have a hard time believing he had 62, just because like usually he was like, I think he started off the game with 12, and then like he didn't have like he had a couple back-to-back possessions, but he didn't have like those 4 possessions in a row. We're like, oh, this kid's about to go off for a lot. I was like, just throughout the game he would score, and like after hearing he had 62, I was shocked, like, because I honestly, I'll be honest, I didn't think. Like, I didn't process this man just had 62 till like you get like the score sheet at the end of the game.
Mike and Aston, let me ask you guys this because it came up at the Final Four, but you guys get to climb that ladder. And Aston, you committed to a program that had won 5 games the year before. Does that build as a team enter your mind as you're making that climb to cut down the nets?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we said it in the post-game press conference. You come in and not really knowing what to expect. I knew that they had a lot of seniors the year before I came, and was kind of thrown in with a group that had already formed relationships. And those guys accepted me with open arms, and then obviously got to make strong connections with like Jay and Spencer Peterson and Jake Mulligan, who ended up transferring out but was a freshman coming in the same time I did. And just seeing guys evolve over time, their games evolve, people take on bigger roles, and then just knowing the work that went into the performances that people gave is pretty fun to look back on, and I'll have fond memories of that for sure. And going through practices with those guys, and sometimes getting in fights with those guys. I know LA and I got into it a little bit his first week, I think, and just knowing all the moments like that went into that, it's pretty special. I whooped LA, by the way.
No, that's not true. Reagan, Pastor Reagan hopped in before any punches were thrown.
I will say this: they tease about this, but that was a really significant moment in that season because Aston. People may not. Aston actually respected the fact that LA wouldn't back away 1 week into the season, 1 week into his time. I remember walking back from that practice going, we may have something here, because Aston is somebody that wants to know you're not going to back away when things get tough. And I know Luke, so I knew he wasn't going to. So that was a significant moment. I really thought that was a pivotal moment. They tease about it, but I remember that vividly from that time. I'll tell you the other thing, Rusty, I share with people is I was playing golf the summer after Aston's sophomore year and Jay's freshman year. We were 12 and 13, and I'm playing golf with a bunch of Wheaton alums, and they're asking me what it's like to coach Aston, and I said, listen, I think we've got a team that can win a national championship, and he might be the best player in the country someday. And they kind of looked at me like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, I'm going to tell you, I know where this team can go, and I know how good he could be because I was around it every day, and I knew the work ethic. But I also knew how good Luke Peters and Jay Spencer and Spencer Peterson and some of these other guys were going to get as well. And I'll never forget that conversation. I could actually take you to the hole I was standing at and get the group of guys together. And it's fun to watch something like that come to fruition, but it was actually through a lot of hard work by these guys.
Yeah, Jay, you committed to that program after a 5-20 season. What goes through your mind as you finish that season at the Final Four, given what that 3-year buildup has been?
So me actually not knowing that the team was 5-20 coming in when I committed, I was pretty naive as far as like knowing exactly what to look at as far as like my basketball.
We didn't mention it, Jay? We didn't bring it up?
Oh, didn't mention it. Not
that's a hard sell.
So like I was pretty more looking towards like what connections and stuff that I built just because of how I was with my high school team and my high school coaches and things like that. But I knew from how my mindset was and knowing the mindset of the guys around us that we could do what we did that year. They had mentioned it with us coming in, and especially players talk. So they gave us a scoop about how Coach saw us during recruiting and stuff like that, and exactly what was said. And he said that with the group of guys that was coming in, he thought that we could win the national championship before we even touched base and met with each other. So just seeing how our relationship formed and seeing some of the battles that we had overcame over the 3 years of being together, I knew that we were going to do something special before it was all said and done.
Mike, let me give you the floor to kind of put the last word on getting the chance to relive these two games and maybe kind of thinking back through what some of the memories of that season were.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, Rusty. Obviously, it's great to see these guys and relive it. And like I said, I hadn't watched either game in the totality, so it was fun. And I think you probably could sense I kind of got back into coach mode a little bit, trying to think what we were doing and the strategies of it. The biggest thing I appreciate about that season is there were moments it was not an easy year, and it ended really well. And so, but there were moments that was a tough season, and a lot of moments that, and we were so close. We were down 9 or 10 against Elmhurst in the conference tournament. We were down 9 or 10 at halftime to Milliken, the final regular season game. We're a little bit on the bubble when we lose to North Central in the CCIW semifinals, and got a huge break by them beating Augustana. So I think about the amount of work that went in to getting there. And this team really battled all season to get to that moment, which I think, at least for me, made standing on that ladder and cutting down the net pretty special, because I knew that it was not an easy road. It was not a straight line. This team had to fight and overcome some stuff to get where we ended up. And obviously, it goes without saying, it's a lifetime professional memory that we will share. And I texted the group of seniors when the NCAA tournament started this year, just a reminder of how neat an experience it was for us to make that run last year.
Well, guys, thanks for taking the time to join us and go over this the last 2 nights. I know this has been fun to kind of relive those memories. I was 1,000 miles away or so in Florida watching the baseball team go nuts watching this. So this has been fun to relive this with you guys.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rusty.
Thanks, Rusty.
Thanks for tuning in to the first 2 episodes of Thunder Classics. Stay tuned. We'll have more games coming up as we rewatch and relive some of the greatest games in Wheaton College athletics.